Welcome to the FretDojo podcast, the place where pro guitar players share their secrets. Visit www.FretDojo.com to access online courses and free resources to take your guitar playing to the next level.
Hello, Greg O'Rourke here on the FretDojo podcast, and it's very exciting today because we have the wonderful Rotem Sivan joining us today, one of the most prolific jazz guitarists out there online, and we're very excited to have him on the show today. So before we get started, I just thought I'd share a little bit of Rotem's background and his credentials. So Rotem graduated from the Bookman Mehta School of Music at Tel Aviv University with a degree in classical composition before moving to New York City in 2008 to study at the New York School for Jazz and Contemporary Music. Rotem's performed all over Europe, North and South America, Israel and India, including at many of the top festivals such as Palenque, Montreux and the Sonora Jazz Festival, just to name a few. Rotem has recorded 7 albums, and his latest, called Dream Louder, is being released on January 12th, 2024, so coming up very soon. In addition to being a prolific recording artist and performer, Rotem is also a leading voice in guitar instruction. Rotem's given workshops in top university and schools all around the world and has developed a massive online presence, including over 136,000 subscribers on YouTube and 65,000 followers on Instagram. So I'm a bit envious of that, I have to say. Peter Bernstein says, Rotem Sivan is one of the most creative and adventurous guitarists on the scene today. He has a great imagination as well as the technical abilities to communicate what's inside that imagination. He is with no doubt the next guitarist of our times. Jazz Times magazine says his style and sound bring a fresh flair and a remarkable sophistication to jazz which transcends audiences. Alright, hello, I'm here with the wonderful Ryan Dillahay. How you going, Ryan?
I'm good, Greg. How are you?
Good, thanks. It's great to see you here. And we have a very special guest today, the wonderful Rotem Sivan. Welcome to the FretDojo podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure. Great to be here.
It's fantastic to have you here, Rotem, a guitarist of your caliber, and someone that we can definitely be very inspired with on YouTube, given the massive following that you've gained on that platform and Instagram as well. We thought we're obviously going to cover quite a lot of ground today. We're going to get into guitar tips, jazz guitar tips, all that side of things. But first I want to get started to ask you a little bit about yourself. How did you get started with guitar and jazz guitar specifically? But you have quite a unique style. I'm interested to hear kind of how you evolved your style and your influences along the way. But where did it all start for you?
Sure. I guess I always wanted to play guitar. I remember being a kid and kind of nagging my parents to send me to guitar lessons. They're like, oh no, you're too young. And eventually when, I don't know, maybe it was 10 or something, or 11. So they're like, okay, you can now study guitar. And then I started, and actually it was very chill. I wasn't crazy about it. I was into it, but it wasn't the thing that I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is all I want to do. It started kind of slowly. I just played some chords, and sang songs with my friends. And I think when I was like in middle school, I started getting into it more and more, and it felt always like music is this magical world I have no idea about. I felt like there's this mystery universe that is just across the door, and I don't understand what's going on at all. And that feeling was very intriguing for me. I remember listening to different styles of like jazz and classical music and literally not understanding what's going on. And that was kind of magical because I was like, wow, clearly something special is happening there and I just don't get it. I like it, but I don't understand what's going on. So I was always curious to be able to process that information and, listening to Bach and be like, oh, this is a B minor going to D major, etc., etc. So all these things were quite exciting for me. And I started getting into jazz. I think a friend of my brother's at the time liked jazz just as a listener, and he gave me a few, kind of records of like some jazz records, and I just listened to that. I didn't know a lot, and little by little I started getting more and more into jazz and trying to practice and play with people and trying to study, and it was kind of like a path, I would say. But that was the early days, if that makes sense. Just like kind of like understanding there is this universe that I don't know about, and I'm really really excited about. Yeah.
It's quite interesting listening to your performances. That I've seen on YouTube. You've got quite I would say an eclectic style. Very adventurous. You're experimental. I even saw one recording where you were literally playing on a guitar with one hand and a keyboard on the other, essentially. So, what gave you inspiration for kind of breaking out of the more sort of typical jazz mold and going into these adventurous directions?
Yeah, it's a good kind of point maybe. So I feel for a very long time all I wanted to play was jazz. So the path that I took was basically in high school I started getting into it. But I studied in a school which was an art school, and in that school they only had a classical department. So I decided to move to the classical department and to also do like a recital, because it was kind of like sort of like a senior recital. But I really just started playing. I actually didn't play classical guitar, so it's kind of rushed. So for about a year or so, or 2 years, I started studying classical guitar as well, and I got into this like situation where in that school the level was pretty good. I mean, it was really good, because a lot of the kids that I was in the class with studied classical music for actually most of their life. Yeah, granted we were 16, 17, but they studied since they were 4 or 5, so they're pretty serious. Like my best friend at the time already played concertos with symphonies around the country. It was
Yeah.
And we had, I think, 3 or 4 people that had very extreme perfect pitch. So, like in dictation class, I remember the first dictation class coming in, and it was like, I didn't even understand what we were doing. I just sat down and she started playing stuff, and people would write notes, and I was kind of shocked. I was like, what's going on? So it was kind of like a very deep dive, kind of like being thrown into the water, and I was like, okay, I need to understand how to listen to these chords, how to understand notes, etc., etc. So that kind of led me in the direction of, continuing to study jazz and guitar and practicing and playing with people, but also really worked on trying to hear things in a truthful and more accurate way. So I started studying with a few teachers, harmony and theory and ear training since I was, maybe 15, 16, something like that. And my first teacher, Irena Gelfand, was amazing, and I studied with her for a couple of years. Later on, I moved to Tel Aviv University, where I actually started studying with Dr. Batsheva Rubinstein. She's kind of world-renowned in ear training, and she's also the head of the faculty, was the head of the faculty there. And I studied with her for a few months, I think, privately. But then she said, you should just come to the university. You'll have more classes, and it's cheaper, because universities is very cheap in Israel. So I was kind of surprised, because I never really saw myself studying classical composition, but I said, why not? Actually, it's a great foundation for music. So I moved to Tel Aviv, and I got into the classical department, and it was basically a classical composition department which I went to. So one of the focal point were harmony and ear training. That was a very strong kind of like avenue that was very necessary. And of course, we learned how to write fugues, analyzing structures, etc., etc. So while practicing guitar and jazz guitar, I at the same time, went to school for classical composition and tried to learn music from the ground up, if you will, right? So studying masters of music, just from Palestrina to Dowland and Bach and Mozart and you name it, right? So that process was very informative for me and very interesting, because I got to be exposed to a lot of music that I would never probably check out that thoroughly. We had these listening tests every kind of quarter or something, and you had to recognize between sections of symphonies and know all the keys and all these things. So I remember just memorizing tremendous amount of music, And all these things kind of like add up to your vocabulary and how you approach things at the end of the day, I feel. So this was one big thing that I was kind of like is a part of my, I guess, education, you know, and how I feel and see music. And then the other thing is, well, studying jazz, and I'll be honest, I still study jazz. I mean, every day I practice and learn songs or solos or, you know, things. It's a part of what I think I need to do and how I see the world. I like learning, I guess. And so a part of it was transcribing, of course, guitar players and also not guitar players. So one of my favorite artists is piano players. So I checked out a lot of piano players. So, you know, not just piano players, but also just different, I guess, instrumentalists. So transcribing Hank Mobley and Miles and and of course, again, the master of guitar like Wes, etc., etc. But just checking out a lot of artists, Bill Evans and Brad Mehldau and Win Kelly and you know, Ahmed Jamal and etc., etc. So trying to see how people perceive music and learning from other masters, not just our instrument, was and still is very important for me. Yeah.
Wow. So it sounds like you've had quite a amalgamation across a wide spectrum of music to create your unique sound. I find it very interesting that you've studied intently classical composition, classical guitar, and it's kind of all come together. Do you find this, because I studied classical guitar for a long time myself. I guess a follow-on question is, do you feel like those two styles are very complementary? Like, what was, or do you find that they're kind of at cross purposes? You know, like what does it feel like to have drawn on both those styles to create your sound? Do you feel like it was a kind of a seamless integration there?
Not necessarily. In the beginning, it felt a little separated. I remember practicing, you know, I guess no, it's not there. Like different Bach things, you know, the Dowland, etc., etc., and it felt just learning, you know, or I remember playing a lot of Lou Brower, and so it just felt like I'm learning the piece and I don't really understand it. But later on, as I progress with music, you know, I approach it differently and I start saying like, oh, here's this G minor going to D7 and oh, he's playing this flat 6 there. So kind of like seeing and trying to hear the music more from that angle, and kind of for me coming to, you know, to play classical pieces, and I still play some. I mean, not seriously, right? Just kind of reading the violin sonatas or the cello suites on guitar, again, just for myself. So playing that and understanding what's happening there harmonically, or trying to understand, you know, and looking at the fugue and saying, oh, this is cool. Here's this line again and this voice. I think this is all a big part of music. So it's just sounds and colors, and it's a different language, granted, but still the idea of tension and release in harmonic way is very similar to how we perceive it today. Again, it's a different vocabulary, granted, but still the essence of the ideas of how chord tones function and how tension is created is very similar. So we perceive a lot of things very similarly, I would say.
Wow, great answer. No, that was fantastic.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to ask, you know, when you're talking about all these diverse influences you have, did you kind of have an idea of the music you wanted to make from that, or was it more kind of a natural process of those things kind of finding their way into your playing and your composition?
Yeah, I think it's always a process. I mean, I don't feel that I figure it out, and I don't think I'll ever feel that I figure it out, and I think nobody feels that way. I think when we record music and albums and create things, it's sort of like a snapshot of how we feel and hear things at this specific time, how open our ears and how open we are to interact with people, life, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that I had like a clear vision of what it is that I wanted to do. I did want to find something that I connect to emotionally with, and I understand that the idea of learning and studying will eventually bring you to some language or style that you are connected to. You know, if you really like diminished chords or whatever, you know, this color, you'll dive into it more and you'll find cool things, and then it will probably be in your playing. If you really like, you know, some polyphonic ideas or cross rhythms, and you work on that, it will find it and kind of appear in your phrasing and sentences. So I do find that what we like will appear. I'm not stressed about having it appear the next day. And I think it's all about this longer process with music, right? So, and that's, I think, just from an educational perspective, I think this is one of the places that a lot of people kind of fall a little bit, because, you know, they're like, oh, let me practice this scale and tomorrow I need to know it. Whereas a lot of us are actually in this game of, you know, or in this path of music and evolving musically for a very long time. You know, it's not like we probably, hopefully, want to create music for many, many years, maybe 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 years. So the idea of spending, or more, right? But the idea of spending time and learning information deeply is very, very useful in that sense, right? So I think the deeper we go, the better it is, and it will appear like your language, or, you know, these ideas that we practice later on in your playing, and later can be a week, a month, or 6 months, you know, if you kind of like dive into it. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's I think people are so impatient when it comes to getting better, especially at this style. You know, you got to treat your learning like a garden, isn't it? Like those seeds that you plant, those little ideas that you work on on the way, as you say, they sprout. You know, sometimes quite a long time down the track. But the key is to be consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think jazz and improvised music has quite of a learning curve. It's definitely possible, but it does take a couple of years, more than two, quite a few years to get comfortable. I mean, and I think it's always a process, and I think it will always be a process, but there is a point where you can have a conversation with your fellow musician, and it's a conversation, you know. Not every conversation is the best conversation you ever had because of yourself, or because of the mood you're in, or because of the other person, but some of them are quite amazing, you know, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you say, like, it takes at least a few years at least. I find with this kind of learning, it's a bit like a curve, you know, like an exponential curve. It's sort of like the bottom of the curve. I'll go the other way on my camera. The bottom of the curve, it doesn't look like you're making much progress, but you are coming along the curve. But then there comes this point where there's an inflection, and where all of a sudden you start getting better quite dramatically, because everything that you've worked on is compounded over that time. Where people make the mistake is they just fall off, you know, if you and give up, you know, that's because you haven't actually reached that point yet of progress.
Yeah, totally get it. Yeah.
All right, Ryan, you got another question?
Yeah, and I was also, you know, hearing about you talking about your experience in university, kind of being in this new place with all these people who are maybe at a different level, or at a higher level even. Was that kind of anything like your experience coming to New York City? You know, was that almost kind of like another shock of seeing all this different kind of, a different sort of musical community there? Can you maybe talk a little bit about that transition for you?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the level that I was shocked the first time was in high school, or middle school, high school, I guess. When I moved to this classical department. In university, there were also quite some good people there. When I moved to New York, I was very scared. I thought everybody will be just the best musician in the universe. So I went to school at the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music. And there were, of course, amazing people there. There was, you know, I remember getting there, and there was this amazing bass player, named Chris Smith. And he was, you know, I remember freshman year, and he's already playing some gigs at the Village Vanguard with Jeff Dane Watts, and I was just shocked, you know. It's just like the ultimate dream that any jazz musician can have, you know, kind of like playing at the Village Vanguard, and he's just a freshman, like we just got to school, and he's doing that. And then, but the levels were very varied, I would say. There were people that didn't know what a 2/5 is, and then there were people that had gigs with, Jeff Dane Watts. So it was shocking as a city, because there's so much creative energy and so many people, and of course a lot of great artists. But also just at school, there were a lot of levels. It wasn't just one thing. But nevertheless, it was definitely a shock that pushed me to study and learn more. And I would say still does. New York is just a tremendous place of creation. And then it kind of kicks your ass sometimes, and you can take it very positively or negatively. It can be kind of like, you play a gig and it kind of like, oh, I just didn't feel the way I wanted it to feel. Then from the other side, it can just be insanely amazing, because you are able to connect with people that are doing this craft on a very, very high level, so you can bring a song that is very complex in complex time signature, and this guy that I'm showing it to him can get it in 35 seconds, and that's quite remarkable. Yeah. The guys that I'm playing with are kind of insane with that. So yeah, we're just again putting this album January 12th. It's called Dream Louder. So the folks I'm playing with. So Miguel Rasa is the drummer, and he's exactly that kind of guy. So I remember showing him this song of mine in 4, but it has this like groove that's overlaying in 11, and it's quite complicated. And I remember showing it to him, and he's like, has this deep voice, like, man, it's really hard. And then 35 seconds later, I kid you not, he just nailed it, and that's it. There was no more conversation. I was like shocked. It was like, wow, it's like amazing, yeah. But he's exceptional, but it's just like, yeah, these kind of folks, roam the streets here. So, yeah.
Oh, well, speaking of your new album, Rotem, we've got a special sneak peek for our audience. We'd like to play a track, if that's okay, from your upcoming album, Dream Louder. The track's called Dragon, and keep in mind, everyone, this is coming out on January the 12th, 2024, so make sure you look out for that. Subscribe to Rotem's YouTube channel or his other social media channels to be advised when all that's coming out. So do you want to tell us a little bit about this album before we get started, Rotem?
Sure. So the album is means a lot to me, I guess. So there's this idea, this emotional kind of idea of, articulating your dreams. So that's why the title is Dream Louder, sort of like not only articulating them, but kind of like almost shouting them in your head. And for me, that's connected to, when people ask Dizzy, does he think about this line and how he hears it in his head? So he was kind of like shouting it. He says it's not like, no, it's like, it's like really hears it. It's very loud, like a shout. It's very, very kind of like wanting to get out. So I feel like the idea of us, allowing ourselves to dream louder and to kind of like experience that for ourselves, then we can materialize it later on in reality. A lot of the songs in this project were written for people I care about a lot. So my wife is Laura, that's Laura Love. And then it's a lot of the songs were for her family, actually. So Luke is her dad, and Hilda, the first song on the album, is her mom. And I just had a chance to meet an exceptional, kind of like group of people that now we're family, because we got married last year. So it was kind of
congratulations.
Like, wow, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so make sure everyone stays tuned after this, because we're going to check out some of Rotem's top jazz guitar tips for aspiring students. But let's first listen to Dragon from Rotem's brand new album, Dream Louder. Okay, so that was Dragon from Rotem's brand new album Dream Louder. Make sure you check that out and subscribe to Rotem's YouTube channel to get all the details about that. But let's now move on with some top tips that you could share for all budding jazz guitarists out there, Rotem. So, in terms of what the most important things are for jazz guitar students to focus on. You know, when they're practicing day to day in the practice room, what should they be focusing on the most, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are a few things that I would say. First, I would find something that you are emotionally connected to. So I would still try to practice things that you enjoy and you care about. So there is not just, oh, I have to practice all these scales, but also some love there, right? So for example, I think it's a great idea if you love jazz. I assume that you love some of the songs. So finding a song that you really like, whether it's Autumn Leaves or Solar or All the Things You Are or Stella by Starlight, it doesn't really matter, but just a song, and it could be more jazzy, less jazzy, but find a song that you connect to and you like and learn it deeply. And when I say deeply, I would kind of break it down into a few aspects. So the first thing is I would listen to the song. I would not pull the real book. Now there's nothing wrong with using charts and information, but I would promote the idea that music is the art of listening, so you want to listen and be able to process information in that sort of way. And again, if it's hard, it's because you haven't done it, right? So I remember the first time I tried to learn a song, it was hard. The first solo I tried to learn was hard. The second solo was still hard. The third one was a tiny bit easier. The third, the fourth, etc., right? So the same thing with songs. I think learning songs and learning melodies and learning harmony is extremely important. So it could be creep, if you like, Radiohead, listen to the song, understanding the melody in relationship to the chords. Okay, it has 4 chords, but great chords, And the same way, again, if we look at a jazz standard, learning the melody from a record, right? Listening to a bunch of versions, singing along, understanding how the melody sounds against the chord, and taking your time and really understanding. So it's not just fingerings. I remember when I learned Solar, right? I remember just kind of learning the song and being able to play it, but I could play it only in one place, right? There was that was that. And the idea of music is this sound of tension and release and understanding how things actually function. So if you take one song and actually learn it, actually spend the time to understand the relationship between the center and the notes, that is why it sounds so cool. So I feel my answer is kind of like taking the melody and really learning it, and then playing the melody not in one place, but maybe in a few places. Singing the melody, playing the chords in time and singing the melody. So again, trying to create and hear this symbiotic relationship between the melody and the chords, because a melody sounds good on chords, on a set of chords, right? And chords sound good in relationship to the harmony, to the melody oftentimes. So they have this beautiful symbiotic relationship. So learning the melody and then connecting that sound to the chords is really useful. So really taking your time, instead of learning 500 songs in a very approximated way, I would start really slow and learning deeply. If you can sing it and hear it, and you're comfortable with Solar in the key of C, then move it to the key of G. See if you can find it. And if it's hard, it's good. It means that you need to understand what's happening there, and maybe you don't understand it just yet. And going back to C and seeing the relationship between Solar and a minor blues, because Solar is basically a minor blues with little alternate changes. And then once I take this idea of one song, I would oftentimes try to see the bigger picture of the key center. In the case of Solar, just as an example, we can kind of be in C minor, C minor pentatonic. Now, not all the chords are going to 100% work, but most of them are going to work. So the first kind of step for me is understanding the general center that we're located at. And of course, different songs would have more than one center, so it's a little more complex. That's why when people start playing guitar and jazz, they would learn Summertime, because you have one center in a way. So I would start by seeing the bigger picture and being able to play that pentatonic scale in a few positions in time, and then I would connect it to the melody. I would do all these actions slowly but surely to really deeply know what's going on. And the more you zoom in, right, the more you're closer to the changes. So you can start saying, well, specifically with solar, there's a 2-5 going to F major, so I can articulate that a little bit better. Later on, you can say, wow, I can not only see the neighborhood that the scale is located in, but I can also say, like, wow, there is a G minor 7 chord there that I can articulate if I want to, or there's a C7 chord, etc., etc. So I think the process for me is trying to see things in a general way, in a truthful way, but general, and then diving slowly but surely deeper into the chord changes, to the chord scale, etc., etc. And the thing that I think was what I didn't understand was that by learning the melody really well, it will guide you through the song. Because I remember when I started playing, I lost the form all the time, and I had to kind of think, C minor, C minor, G minor, C7, and it was just exhausting. And I could do it, but I got confused at times. But the reason that I got confused is because I didn't hear the melody. The changes were just a set of 12 bars that I didn't understand the relationship. I memorized the chords, and I could follow them sometimes, but I didn't see the melody. I didn't hear it. Once I continued practicing and started hearing the melody functioned as a sort of a light tower to guide me through the song. So it's very hard to impossible to get lost. At the end of the day, you can always get lost, but you can listen to the bass or the drummer and you're back. But the idea that you really follow the structure and you hear the melody, and then it's not hard, because again, like we said 2 minutes ago, the chords and the melody are this symbiotic thing. So if we know the melody, we also know the chords. So it's sort of like something that really helped me to learn music. And if I were to do that since whatever, middle school or high school, I would probably know music better. But it's okay, if you doesn't matter, when you do it, but I would just start and try to sort of get to the bottom of it. Don't kind of let things be unclear. Good. Check it out. It's worth it.
It's amazing tips, man. This is fantastic. What you just last said about that kind of, don't worry if you don't get it the first time, just get to the bottom of it. It kind of reminds me of Thomas Edison, inventing the light bulb, and how many thousands and thousands of iterations and essentially failed experiments he went through. But he didn't get dissuaded by that. It's like, okay, that didn't work, let's try the next thing. Oh, that didn't work, let's try the next thing, until he got to the bottom of it, essentially. So
you're talking about how passionate you are about learning and kind of all these different sources you're pulling information from. What does it look like when you first start your day with the instrument? What's the first thing you go to?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say it changes. So usually I have sort of a routine. I still have a routine, but I just change it. So I'll oftentimes find something that I want to get better at and I care about, and I'll work on that for a while. So let's say now I decided a few months ago that I really want to learn a lot of songs that I don't know. So I just decided that, and now, the first thing I do is kind of play piano for half an hour. I'm not a piano player, but I just really like it, so that's the first thing I do. And it's pretty early in the morning, sorry neighbors. And then after that, I'll start playing guitar, and the first thing I do with guitar these days, again the last couple of weeks or months, is learning a song. So I have like a list of songs I always wanted to know, or just, whatever. I listened to a song, and I was like, I don't know this song, let me learn. So every day I just learn a song. I listen to a few records, a few recordings of that song. I learn the melody, I learn the chords, then I play over it, and then I oftentimes like playing things in odd meters as well, because I'm working on some resolution points and trying to end phrases in different places, so it's really nice to do it. So I practice a lot of these songs also in 5. That's what I'm doing at least the last couple of weeks. So once I learn the song, I'll play it in 5 and do all these resolution points, and then the next day I'll do another song. And then the weekend usually I'll try to go over these songs to not forget. But this is something that I decided some months ago or some weeks ago that I want to know more songs that I always wanted to learn. And I was like, okay, what's the best way? And I kept feeling that if I put it later in the day, it just doesn't happen. I said, okay, so the first thing I'm doing is opening the laptop, pulling up a YouTube of a song I like, and learning it, just that. And sometimes it takes like 3 minutes, and sometimes it takes an hour. It depends on how complex the song and, etc., etc. And then I have different sets of exercises that I work on, but the thing is, they keep changing, right? So I think the idea of practicing is finding, you want to practice things and see that you're progressing. You don't want to just practice, C major scale all the time. Now, there's endless things to practice in C major scale, but I think you want to do it for a while, and then you want to change it. You want to, I guess I kind of see music as this sort of like ball of light, and when you practice the same angle all the time, it's not going to expand as much. And again, there's nothing wrong with playing on scales. I do it as well. But I'll try to say like, okay, I play this exercise and I got better, and now it's not progressing as much as it did, so I'll just stop. And then I'll say like, okay, let me play pentatonic scale with 4 notes per string and do it through the keys then, or whatever it is that you're interested. And then let me try this rhythmic idea of whatever, ... So I'll keep kind of adding these elements and explore things that I'm not comfortable and make them comfortable.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
I've got a bit of a question for you on that, Rotem, specifically with improvisation. Because I think the thing is with classical guitar, for example, we were talking about that earlier, is it does have a very sort of structured straightforwardness to it in terms of how you build the skill. Like you learn this one piece, you might go through, say, classical grades and things like that. But jazz is much more open-ended. But specifically with improvisation, what are the main ingredients did you focus on to attain mastery of that particular skill when it comes to jazz guitar?
Well, I don't know about the word mastery, but I mean, I think the idea is, for me, is trying to be free, to be as free as possible. So for anyone, it means different things, right? So if you're trying to improvise in the style of B.B. King, it will be a slightly different process than if you're trying to improvise in the style of Wes Montgomery. They're both, I guess, a great expression of intention and emotion and structure, and nothing is better or worse, but the language of Wes Montgomery is more complex to obtain. So for me, I think what really helped and still helps is trying to see the fretboard in a clear way. So understanding the notes and how they relate, seeing the chord tones in these triads, the 1, 3, 5, and later on the 1, 3, 5, 7. I think playing things in time and understanding, if we're talking about jazz, the feeling of 2 and 4 and how it relates to these elements. And then transcribing vocabulary and learning the language, right? So if it's Charlie Parker or Wes or Charlie Christian or all these masters of guitar, where there is this relationship between the chords and the rhythm and the sounds.
So I've got a bit of a gear question. I love seeing all those videos of you playing that Red Archtop. And I was wondering if you could walk us through kind of the setup of that in terms of the pickups and what kind of sounds you're getting out of it.
Sure. So yeah, I know it looks a little weird. So there is indeed the MIDI pickup. There is the regular pickup, just guitar pickup, and then there is also a microphone inside the guitar. So I get two outputs. There's actually also a piezo pickup. So you can kind of blend all these things and get some sounds. To be honest, like I use the regular pickup 95% of the time, and I do like the microphone, so I sometimes use it. It's kind of nice, but it only works well when it's not too loud. So when I record, I definitely like it, and in small situations. But on bigger stages, sometimes it has the risk of feedback, so sometimes I avoid it. But it's really cool to be able to explore these sounds from one guitar. So I just like the idea of exploring sounds, I guess.
Sounds like you have limitless possibilities with that setup, Roto. It's So make sure everyone checks out Rotem's YouTube channel, and you can see that wonderful guitar in action. I've got one more question here. This is a bit of a left field one, but because obviously a lot of people watching yourself or us on YouTube, they're trying to a lot of the time to teach themselves. So what if people had to teach themselves, what would you suggest they would use in terms of, your favorite instructional books, or, like DVDs or recordings or other resources? What direction would you point them in?
Yeah, so I'll answer it on a few levels. So first, I think if you're serious about any craft, I think it's a really good idea to find somebody with a better mental image of what you're trying to do than you. Now, I'm not saying you have to take a teacher and you have to have private lesson, but I'm just saying maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a teacher. But I think as people, we learn from people. There's nothing wrong with YouTube, and I think there is a lot of information there. But I think sometimes it's also hard to take that information and to find ourselves in that process. Now, it's not impossible because people do it, but I think it's really helpful to also find some consistency in this one-on-one or something of that nature. So if you're serious about any craft, again, you want to swim, you want to run, you want to, whatever it is, you ask people, how do I do that? You try and you fail, and then you're like, hey man, do you want to go for a run with me? And you run, and he looks at you like, what are you doing? It's like, so I think it's the same a little bit with any of these musical kind of endeavors. So getting ideas and cool leaks and cool kind of snips from different channels is always nice and it's good. But if you're serious about this process, I would also consider at least finding somebody that you can consistently meet up with and learn from. In terms of books, I actually don't really know books to recommend. The only book that I really used quite a bit was the violin sonatas and the cello suites, as well as the Bach chorales. So these are, but again, if you're just starting guitar, it's not the right thing movie. I mean, it's great, but it's, might be a little much if this is your first guitar lesson. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer for that, but I think the idea of finding somebody with a better mental image is something that helps and helped me all the time. So I'll ask my friends, I'll take lessons, I'll take vocal lessons, I'll take whatever, different things to study whatever it is that I'm interested in, because I know I just don't know.
Amazing. Thanks for that, Rotem. I've got one last, sort of on the flip side now, just one last question before we wrap up. Is because obviously you're a very highly regarded teacher, not just a performer but a teacher as well, with with many followers. So in terms of us as teachers, how do you think we can help our students become the most accomplished jazz players they can be?
Wow, it's a strong question. I think the way I approach the YouTube or the educational parts that I create is I'm trying to make videos for myself when I was in middle school or high school. I remember the feeling of practicing 10 hours and just like shooting arrows at the dark, like not knowing anything that I'm doing, like scales, okay, I'm practicing 3 hours of scales, but like I don't even know the notes that I'm playing, So for me, now that I'm talking about learning music, I really want everybody that I interact with to think about the basics, to think it's not basic, it's just music, to think about what it is that consists this thing. And oftentimes it's pretty simple. It's tension and release. It's understanding the note that is being played against a different note, understanding the chord in relation to the scale. So for me, the biggest thing is understanding and focusing on the idea of like really hearing it and feeling the elements, so they're not just scary words. Oh, it's a 2-5-1 with a flat 5. That sounds like, for somebody that didn't play that for the first time, you're like, it's a what? But then when you break it down, it's super simple. And then when you break down the sound of a flat 5, you're like, okay, I get it. Now practice that for a month or 6 months, and then you hear it, and that's it, and you got it, and then you can go to the next one. So I like thinking about it in sort of like these simple building blocks that are necessary for us to understand, the same as a language. You don't really need to play this crazy chromatic line. I mean, you can, but it would probably be a great idea to, take the melody for Somewhere Over the Rainbow and play it in a few keys and find different chords. It's a beautiful melody, it's a beautiful song, and just understanding the relationships. So for me, I think as educators, I think one of the things that we can do, and that's what I'm trying to do again, doesn't mean it's the right thing, but that's what I see fit, is the idea of diving deeper, understanding the relationships, and trying to save people time. Because I remember, and I feel that I lost time trying random things, and they were not all successful, naturally. So if I were to restart playing guitar, I would be like telling myself, like, hey man, sing it. Can you hear it? And I would say no, like, sing it. Let's check it out. Let's dive deep. Don't play it like in the speed of light, not accurate and random. It's not helpful for anybody, So that's what I would tell myself. And I was like, I just want to save this time. So I feel like as educators, giving people as strong and as clear guidance, if you will, to these simple ideas that are there would be really helpful in the longer arc of progressing, and therefore they can do it themselves, right? That's the goal. That you don't need to show them stuff, you just kind of show them how to find it, and then they find it themselves, and then they don't need you. That's the idea, I guess.
Okay, so thank you so much, Rotem, for coming along and being very generous with your time today, sharing these absolutely amazing tips. I think everyone listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube should rewind back and listen to this a few times, because there were some amazing nuggets littered throughout this, some huge knowledge bombs when it comes to building your skills on guitar, some really fundamental things to keep in mind. So we can make sure you subscribe to Rotem to check out more of his amazing material. His YouTube channel is at Rotem Sivan Guitar, Instagram, same, Rotem Sivan Guitar, and the website is www.rotemsivan.com. So on behalf of Ryan and I, Rotem, and the whole FretDojo community, thank you so much for coming on today's podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And for more jazz guitar lessons, tips, and free stuff, visit www.FretDojo.com.